Meet with Bernardo for 4 or 5 weeks, ask questions, get into discussions, and also include guests such as Michael Levin, Federico Fagin, Christopher Wallace, Rupert Spira, and coming up in November 2024, the celebrated neuroscientist Christoph Koch. So if you enjoy these discussions and you want to join us, discuss these with Bernardo Kastrup and quite an amazing community of meditators, mystics, philosophers, scientists, and simply ordinary people who are very curious about reality. You can find us in the links below or at adventuresinawareness.com. You can also hugely support this channel by hitting like, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts, questions, and reflections in the comments section below. So welcome to week 1 of this course, Bernardo Kastrup with Reality in Mind. My name is Amir. I'm curating. If you haven't met me already, I'm curating and coordinating this course. If you've got any feedback, questions, or comments about the structure of how we're organizing ourselves, then you can let me know. And I just want to quickly introduce today's video. This is a recording of the first course that we did. So what we realized is we don't want Bernardo to have to go back over everything he's already said. We've recorded it. It's better if anyone new just watches this recording, and then we can dive deeper in together into the material. And there are 5 questions that I want you to keep in mind when you watch this, which will help guide your attention. So the first is, what is materialism? Okay, so a lot of people believe things just because that's what everyone else around them believes, but never really questions even, never mind do they believe it or not, they don't even question, what does this belief mean? What does it even say? So materialism is the kind of incumbent, as Bernardo says, the reigning metaphysical worldview of reality in science and in our culture. So just get really clear with yourself, what does materialism claim? So Bernardo's going to go into that. The second question I recommend you keep in mind is, what's the difference between science and philosophy? So Bernardo takes a decent amount of time explaining what the differences are, what science is good for, what philosophy is good for, and why it's important not to conflate or confuse one with the other. The third question, so you may have heard of the hard problem of consciousness. I really recommend you go and Google that, the hard problem of consciousness, if you've never heard of it before. And what you should be able to answer by the end of this first week of the course, if not by the end of the video, then we can engage Bernardo in that question a little bit more, of why is that problem neither hard nor a problem? You know, how does Bernardo see through that problem? Fourthly, what is parsimony and why is it important in metaphysics? So people who understand this question really go a long way to understanding what Bernardo is trying to say. So keep that question in mind, and when he starts to go into it, see if you can understand why out of all the criteria that he talks about for being, for understanding what a good metaphysical framework of reality is, this one is the most important. And finally, towards the end of the presentation, he'll go into what are the arguments against panpsychism. So see if you're able to answer that by the end of the video, and if you're able to do that, then you're really getting into the subtleties of the argument of like, why is one metaphysical proposition better or distinct from another? And it might seem subtle to begin with, but it does really change how you see the world, how you perceive reality, how you even perceive yourself. And so, yeah, we're going to dive straight in. I really recommend you watch every video that's sent out in its entirety before we gather together, and jot down any notes, jot down any questions, keep them in mind so we can share them together. And just to say that I think lots of people go through life maybe ignoring, maybe not being interested, you know, who knows, certainly not engaging with me when I ask these questions. You kind of just get annoyed. So I consider you a soulmate if you're motivated and curious enough to book onto a course where we can hold ourselves in this question for 4 weeks together. Then I'm excited to meet you, and I'm excited for the conversations that come out of this. And I really hope you get as much out of engaging with this philosophy as I have.
So the plan for the first part of this course, funny enough, it's not to talk about idealism, but it is to talk about materialism, which is the reigning worldview in our society, in our culture. It's the worldview that sort of underlies a lot of scientific work that is done. The accurate name for this worldview would be the metaphysics of mainstream physicalism. And the reason is materialists say now that, well, it's not only matter in the way that was understood by Democritus. We are now talking about fields and, you know, and particles that represent force. And these things are physical. So physicalism is the better name. Fine. I will still use the word materialism here because this is not a technical audience, and I think it has more appeal to make more clear what I mean. And I also mean metaphysical materialism, not materialism as a set of values, like, well, if the material girl likes to buy shoes and have big houses, well, that's not metaphysical materialism, that's ethical materialism. That's not what I'm talking about, even though one seems to underlie the other, because if all there is matter, then it's hard to see another purpose for life other than to accumulate matter, because it's all there is. But strictly speaking, we are talking about metaphysics in this course. So first part, it is about materialism as the incumbent, so to say. What is it? What are its mistakes? Why it is probably the worst metaphysical option that we have on the table today. To motivate what I'm going to be talking about, I want to convince you first that even militant materialists do not understand what materialism is, especially the ones that aren't philosophers. The militant materialist philosophers tend to know, but the spokespeople of science tend not to know, and this leads to ludicrous situations. So it's very, very important to start from a correct understanding of what materialism entails and implies. To give you an example, famous militant materialist Jerry Coyne, in writing, has said a couple of things to me that betray a drastic lack of understanding of materialism. And that's probably why materialism is so popular, because people don't understand how absurd it is. One thing he has written on record is this: any sensation in animals, be they bacteria or humans, involves some sort of qualia. In other words, some sort of experiential quality. For example, what does it feel like to the crustacean Daphnia, or water flea, most of you would call it a water flea, to detect a predatory fish in its pond? Now, he's talking about not only water fleas, but bacteria as feeling things, as having experiential states, having phenomenal states. Now, a bacterium is a unicellular organism. It does not have a nervous system. According to materialism, a single cell cannot be conscious, cannot have experiential states, because experiential states are supposed to emerge as an epiphenomenon, a sort of side effect of particular complex arrangements of matter that are much more complex than a single bacteria. So right at the start, Jerry Coyne already contradicts materialism, and he is unknowingly and very naively endorsing some form of panpsychism or idealism. He's basically saying that you do not need complex material arrangements for phenomenal states or experiential states to arise. They are there from the bacteria on, and he's associating that with life, which is precisely analytic idealism. It's precisely my version, my theory, if you will, about what's going on. That localized consciousness is associated with life at all levels, all kinds of life. But he is, in principle, ostensibly defending materialism with this statement. Another one. I have never heard a definition of materialism that requires quantitative measurement, but that's Kastrup's definition, and it seems to be one he's confected to rule out consciousness as a material phenomenon or the result of a material phenomenon. So basically what he's saying is that qualities, experiential states, are not epiphenomenal, because that's what materialism says. Materialism says that all that exists is matter, and matter is exhaustively defined in terms of measurable quantities: mass, charge, momentum, space-time position, frequency, amplitude, whatever. And there is nothing left, after you've described matter with quantities, there is nothing left to be said about it. That's the definition of matter under materialism. It does not entail qualities of any kind. The qualities are epiphenomenal. They emerge out of certain complex arrangements of matter, according to materialism. So here he's contradicting materialism again while trying to defend it. So interesting and funny and entertaining as this is a very serious thing. It's not comic because it's tragic. It is this kind of drastic misunderstanding of what's going on, even of what we say is going on, that underlies a multitude of errors in philosophy, in science, and in daily life, because these ideas largely guide how we feel about life. They guide what we perceive to be the meaning of our lives, the worth of our lives. Even if we don't think they are doing that, they are doing that subliminally, because we are getting this message from culture, from the media, from your friends, from the teachers, everywhere. And what is supporting this is a comical level of misunderstanding and error. So let's try to get it straight what materialism is all about. What materialism says is that, I don't know whether you can see my mouse. I hope we can. It's a little laser pointer here. Amir, can you see my laser pointer on the screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So what materialism says is that the qualities we experience, like this multitude of colors here on a chair and a table. So in the world of tables and chairs, there are qualities like colors, like melodies, like flavors, like textures, and so on and so forth. Materialism says that all these qualities that we associate with the world of tables and chairs out there are actually generated by our brain inside our skull, and they only exist within our skull. They don't really exist out there at all. They are not fundamental. They are secondary. They are side effects. They are epiphenomenal. They are generated by our brain. What is really out there is an arrangement of atoms, a purely abstract arrangement of elementary particles, which you cannot visualize. Because if you visualize something, any visualization, even the simplest visualization, the moment you do that, you're bringing qualities into it. And according to materialism, there are no qualities out there. Qualities only exist in here, inside our heads. So you can't even visualize this world of fundamental elementary subatomic particles out there. And importantly, according to materialism, you will say everything there is to be said about this world, this abstract world out there, if you provide a suitable list of quantities that characterizes it. Physical quantities like mass, charge, momentum, geometric relationships, frequencies, amplitudes, and so on and so forth. If you pin down that complete list of quantities, then you have said all there is to be said about the abstract world that is supposedly beyond our skull. We do not have direct access to it because we are locked within our own minds, and our mind happens entirely within our skull. So You can even play with the implications of this. If you go out at night, a clear sky night, and you look up to the sky and you see those beautiful stars, according to materialism, the stars that you see, the qualities that you associate with the visible stars, their color, their luminance, their arrangement, it's happening and exists inside your skull. The inner surface of your real skull is beyond the stars you experience when you look up to the sky at night. That's what materialism is saying. Your entire world, the room that you see around you, the street that you see through the window, all that, the people you see around you, all that exists within the boundaries of your skull, because all that is experiential. There is something out there, according to materialism, that corresponds to the stars you see, that corresponds to the room you see around you, to the street you see out the window, to the people you see around you. There is something out there that corresponds to it, but it is not the people, the room, the stars, the street, as you experience them. All those experiences